Wendy Snyder with you, sitting in for Bob Sirott. He's off this week. He will return next week. And on the line with us right now, live from Ukraine, is Joseph Lindsley. Joseph, I find myself thinking about you on the weekends and hoping all was fairly quiet. And now it's a Monday. How are things?
Well, Wendy, hello from Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. I'm on a balcony overlooking the city. You can see one of the beautiful Golden Dome churches behind me. And by the way, we post videos at UkrainianFreedomNews.com, so you can see a bit of the scenes that I try to share with you. Last night in Kyiv, it was calm. I'm traveling with some American friends who've been here for a couple weeks now, and they've been fortunate to have missed any major attacks as we've traveled the country. And last night, we were on the balcony overlooking the city here, and we saw something fly through the sky. And, of course, you jump, and it was that meteor shower, the Pleiades. Hundreds or maybe more of meteors were visible in many places around the earth, including here over Kyiv City. And, a lot of the city is darkened after curfew. And so it felt like we were in somewhere in the mountains looking at the night sky. And I saw at least a dozen of these meteors flying through the air. And it's so nice to look at the sky and see something that just you can appreciate.
Yeah.
And you know it's not coming to destroy you. But it was not peaceful last night in Odessa and Zaporizhia. The Russians attacked. Ukrainian air defense did work in Odessa. They shot down 15 of the 15 Iranian suicide drones that were sent to Odessa by Russia, and 8 of the Caliber cruise missiles. But it was a big attack on Odessa. And of course, there was damage from the debris that fell as these missiles were intercepted, including a supermarket, which was totally destroyed, and a dormitory through the night. And then in that city of Kherson, which has been through so much, I mean, they were occupied for about 8 months by the Russian forces until liberation last fall. And then the city of Kherson suffered immensely when Russia blew up the Novokakhovka Dam, and they're still suffering. And they had shelling throughout the night in the center of the city of Kherson. Many people in that region still are without water from the dam attack that happened months ago. And I'm talking, people are always moving around the country to help out in every way possible. And Kyiv is such a nexus of that. And I was talking with people who have recently been in Kherson and who are going there. And, they're saying that, what Russia did by destroying that dam, it was a trap. And, and we see that, Ukraine was just beginning its counteroffensive. A lot of people think that really harmed the counteroffensive because they took water away from where water used to be, and they flooded many other places. And there's a huge problem of landmines that the Russians had set, and the ensuing flood causes these mines to be everywhere, floating around. So it's a major hazard. But then the Russians are directly targeting humanitarian volunteers. And so they wait until, whenever there's so in the case of this disaster, as people go down to Kherson to bring water, to try to evacuate people, the Russians are targeting them. And I had lunch today with a French volunteer and a Ukrainian volunteer. One is a medic, and one has been on many evacuation missions. And I said, when you're on these missions, at the front lines and in the gray zones, do you identify your vehicle, with a cross, as a sign of that you are medics? And they both immediately said never, because as soon as you put that symbol on your vehicle, you become a target.
Jeez.
And what we are told, the Russians have bounties. They pay their soldiers extra for killing the medics. And I mean, it's absolutely awful. Yeah. And it's, it's meant to discourage people from coming to help out. So it's very scary. But as I see, people still continue from all over the world to go and help out in these places.
I just can't even believe that. I mean, it sounds bounties. I honestly, this is shocking to me.
This is exactly the type of barbarism that that the world is facing. And then meanwhile, a big story, Wendy, here over the weekend, and I think it's probably around the world. President Zelenskiy announced that he was dismissing all of the chiefs of the regional military recruitment offices. And this has been a story that has been building up a lot in Ukrainian social media. Some people, you might have seen these videos in places like Odessa of young military recruitment officers rounding up Ukrainians in the streets and forcing them into the military, forcing them to come for a medical examination. This never happened sort of in the center of a city, but it would happen, in neighborhoods at the edges of some major cities. And there even were cases where locals would stand up to these military recruitment officials who tried to take Ukrainians off the street, not using proper procedures. And people began to resist. People began to complain. Several months ago, President Zelenskiy said he wasn't happy about this. And finally, on Friday, he announced that all of these regional recruitment chiefs were dismissed, and he's going to replace them with veterans from the front lines, including maybe those who've been wounded who can't fight to the front lines. They are now going to be in charge of military recruitment. And this is big because that recruitment agency is a vestige of Soviet times. Ukraine has been on this long project of removing that Soviet legacy. And so this is a big step, and people are happy that this is being cleaned up. And, this was used by Russian propaganda. A lot of Americans would seize upon these videos and say, oh, Ukraine is some kind of police state. But as you see, even in the wartime, when the people start complaining, the president and the government have to follow the will of the people. That's exactly why Ukrainians are fighting right now. And I was speaking on this topic of corruption with an American. She's done a lot of work here to help Ukraine over the years. And she told me that she took a phone call a few days ago from an American who wants to invest in Ukraine. And the first 10 minutes of the call, he kept asking the American here about corruption. He's like, all I hear about Ukraine is corruption. And she was explaining to him that we hear about corruption because Ukrainians are fighting it. Every week there's new stories of corrupt judges and officials who have been found guilty or who have been charged. And Ukrainians are not covering up the corruption. They are zealously working to uproot it. And this has been their project since 2014. And so the American, as she explained this to the potential investor, he seemed to be reassured. And then he said his next question, this American calling from the USA, was, okay, now can you give me advice on how I can get the best possible deals to buy real estate in Ukraine? How do I get past the systems? Who can I talk to? And the American in Kyiv said, do you realize that what you just asked is the very definition of corruption? And so we see that people say the word corruption in the West. They don't realize that Ukrainians are really working to remove it. And the corruption that we think is here is actually pretty widespread in many places throughout the world, including the United States.
UkrainianFreedomNews.com is where you go to see this and read all about Joseph Lindsley. You're doing a fantastic job. And the Russian ruble hit a 17-month low against the dollar today. So there's definitely a squeeze on Russia's economy from Western sanctions and a slump in export revenues. So we will catch up with you tomorrow.
Wendy, thank you from Kyiv until tomorrow.
Thank you, Joseph Lindsley. UkrainianFreedomNews.com is where you go to find out everything he has covered for us, and we'll speak to him again tomorrow.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Ебать.